am Loretta Hallgren, née Boutin. I'm of French heritage, born in 1942 in Westlock, Alberta. And I was born to a farm family. My earliest memories of living on a farm are not good. I told you it was a lonely life, and I did not like it at all. School was just the best thing in the world because I could get away and be with people and not be lonely. But school was hard to get to. We walked at least a mile to get a school bus through the winters that were sometimes very cold and very awful, but going to school was my life, was the best part.
A little bit about your parents. What were your parents' names, and what kind of people were they?
My dad's name was Andrew, and he only had a grade 8 education. There were 16 children in his family. They could not feed them and care for them, so he dropped out of school at grade 8 and went to work. And, he and his brother had a well drilling company thing, and that's what he worked at in his younger years. My mother was from a German family, actually, and her dad had accumulated about 4 sections of land, and when he passed away, he gave them to his children, and one being my mother. That's how Mom and Dad started farming, with this free little section of land. And when Mom and Dad married, Dad tells us this story so often, he had $10 in his pocket. And he died a millionaire. I'm very proud of him.
Yeah. Yeah. And that money came from farming? Or?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And a lot of hard work. He was a really hard-working man. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But that lifestyle had no appeal to you at all.
Not at all. Oh, it was so hard.
Mm-hmm.
It was so hard. Yeah. And I watched my parents struggle and work hard in the winters. They went off into the north somewhere to a logging camp, and Dad helped log trees, and Mother cooked in the camp to feed the logging men. And, they just, whatever work they could get to make it work, they did, and they survived. So
in your earliest memories, the poverty,
yes,
how bad was it when it came to clothing and food and so on? What was that like?
We always had food. Food was never an issue because we lived on the farm. We had raised cattle and pigs, so there was always lots of meat. We had big gardens, so there was always vegetables and potatoes all winter that were in the cellar. But we were hard-working kids too. We had to work those gardens and milk those cows, and so.
Do you think that was part of the reason why you put the emphasis on your education?
Absolutely.
Is because all that work as a kid
just
seemed so much, and it just seemed like education
was the ticket out.
Was easier, but the ticket out.
Yeah, the ticket out. Yeah.
What subjects did you find that you enjoyed the most as a young student?
Oh, probably science and biology, things like that. And as a young kid on the farm, I would catch mice and cut them open to see what the insides looked like and stuff like that. So I always had an interest in human anatomy and physiology.
Yeah.
So.
Did you ever get in any trouble as a kid? Was there any times when your parents had to punish you for something?
Oh, my mother abused a lot with the strap, physical abuse, and it was for silly things. I had to milk the cows, and once I remember the cow kicking over a full bucket of milk. Oh, I got such a beating for that, but I could never figure that out. I didn't think it was fair. I didn't think it was my fault. So my mother and I did not have a good relationship, I think, because of that. And because I was the oldest, I bore most of that. I think she mellowed as the kids came along, but as the first child, I was
Do you feel that she was that way because that's how she was treated as a child as well?
I don't think so, because my grandmother was very sympathetic to it, and gave her a lot of grief for physically abusing me, because grandmother lived a mile away, and if I got a bad beating, I would run away to grandma and tell grandma what had happened, and I'd be bruised, and it wasn't just storytelling. She could see that I was physically abused. So
did your parents love each other? Did they set a good example a relationship?
I believe they did, yes. I believe they did, yeah. And in her old days, Mom would often say, I had a good marriage. So I think they did, yeah. So, yeah.
So your elementary school was where?
In Dap, Alberta. Just a little nothing place with a school and a corner store and a post office kind of thing, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And was that K to 12?
No, that was, let's see, that would be K to, K to 9. Okay. And then once after 9, we had to be bused to Westlock to high school. And that's where, those were really good years. I remember those years. Do you know, I still have high school friends that live in various places throughout the country. But up until COVID, we would get together actually and spend a few days every summer somewhere, usually on the West Coast. So we've stuck close for all those years. So
that's incredible.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It was interesting how that happened. I think my mother did, when I said that I was interested in a nursing career, she did provide some support for that. So it wasn't as though you should be a farmer's wife, but I told them often enough, I'm never going to marry a farmer, so don't even go in that direction. But once I got to grade 12 and graduated, they were supportive of something like nursing school. So that's where I ventured off to for my first degree as a RN.
Now, today education is so expensive.
Yes.
And your family was not rich. How did that happen as far as paying for it?
Well, that was easy for nursing school, because back then you really didn't have to pay anything. I went to the university hospital and they used nurses in training for their labor. So you got paid nothing, but you provided a lot of free labor for the hospital. So it didn't cost anything to go to nursing school. In fact, you were paid $10 a month to go to nursing school. And we lived in the nurses' residence, and those were really good years. We had a class of 100, and a lot of us are still very close. And in high school, I met my best friend, who is still, after all those years, my best friend. So that's been important to me.
Now, one might say, oh, you're around sick people all the time. That sounds kind of depressing. What was it about nursing and patient care that you loved so much?
Just helping people, I guess, in times of great need often, because people can be very, very sick, and somebody has to be there for them and to bring them back to health. So I think that's what was appealing. It was a great helping profession. Yeah.
And just extending the compassion that people required. Some nurses aren't big on the compassion. Some are.
Yeah.
How would you describe your nursing style?
Oh, I would say it was pretty full of compassion, for sure. Yeah. And I gravitated toward nursing the really sick, the critically ill people, because they were pretty much on the edge. It was life and death along the way, and that's what I think inspired me the most. So intensive care nursing was my thing. And I nursed one of the first heart transplants in the U.S., so that was kind of exciting and a thrilling thing to do. So
where did that happen?
In Cleveland.
Okay.
Yeah. So I had a really good nursing career, but I moved on from that, more into the administrative side of healthcare, and did that for a number of years, and I enjoyed that part of it too.
Okay. Talk a little bit about how and why you went from Alberta to Cleveland, and what happened. Actually, let's back up a bit. You got married for the first time in what year?
1963.
And how long did that marriage last?
5 years.
And for the record, that gentleman's name?
Doug Marshall.
Okay. And so that marriage ended, and at that point, big life upheaval.
For sure, yes.
You met somebody. Who was that?
That was Robert Hallgren. And I met him at work on the job, so yeah.
Which, in many professions, is not exactly something that can help your career.
That's right.
At that point, a major decision had to be made. What was that decision?
The decision was to move to Cleveland, where Bob did his surgical residency, and I had a nursing degree, which was very much sought after in the U.S. in those days. So we went together and spent 4 years there, and I had a very rewarding career there, but I worked very hard. Bob didn't make any money as a resident in the U.S., so I worked 6 days a week and many double shifts. So I worked really, really hard, but we had a pretty good life on my nursing salary, and I was the head nurse, so it was good.
Did you get married in Ohio?
Yes, we did.
You
yes.
did. Tell me a little bit about your wedding day and what your memories of that day are.
Well, by then we had been there 2 years, so we had developed a few friends. So Bob chose a colleague, a fellow resident, and I had chose a nurse that I worked with, and they stood up for us. We were married in a church, and we just went to a nice spot for a dinner, and that was it. It was a very quiet affair, but we went to Hawaii for a honeymoon, so it was okay. And
what did the relatives back at home think when they heard that you got married? I assume that it was quite quick, by the sounds of it.
Well, it was, but my parents knew that we lived together in the U.S., so they were not surprised. In fact, they were pleased that finally we would get this right and get married instead of living together and not being married, but it turned out okay. Yeah. Bob's parents, not so much. That was a lot more difficult because of all the religious background and because he had had a son and he left the wife and son, so that was harder on that side. But my family is really generally quite, well, I would say very forgiving and accommodating. It was not an issue for my family at all. So I thought I had an RN, that's the basic nursing degree. So as soon as I came back, I got my Bachelor of Science in Nursing. So that was a degree. And from there, we really wanted a family. But that was not to be. I could not have children. So, and back in those days, they did not have all these magical things that they have now. So, so we adopted twins. So that was the best thing of all. Yeah.
And so for the record, the twins' names are?
Shayna and Sean.
How old were they when you got them?
3 weeks.
Wow.
And I remember sending a note back to the intensive care unit that I worked, and the boss man wrote a note back and said, "Oh, I see what you've done. You've gone home and started your own intensive care unit." And indeed, twins are like a little intensive care unit, but it was good. We requested twins, and about 9 months after we applied, we got a set of twins, so that was pretty nice. Yeah, definitely the highlight of my life for sure.
So as a young parent, you've got a husband that is a in-demand physician, a lot on the go. You yourself have a lot of training as well. You've kind of put your career on hold a little bit. Talk about raising those kids. What were some of the challenges and what were some of the great aspects of that?
Well, there were a lot of challenges because I really felt that I had to do it mostly on my own. But it was such a lot of fun, and it was a challenge, but it was so rewarding and so fun too. So I think those were, I guess, some of the best years of my life, I would say. Yeah.
Any fun holidays or trips that you took as a young family that really stand out?
Well, we began a tradition of spending our summer vacation in Osoyoos, BC, and the kids learned to love it, and we went back year after year after year, and mixed in there. We did Disneyland and Disney World and Hawaii once in a while, but Osoyoos was some of the best memories, and we stopped going because as teenagers our kids started sneaking out the window of the motel, and so we said, okay, we're done with this. That's what kids do.
Yeah.
So anyway,
what was your style of parenting as opposed to Bob's? Who was the soft one? Who was the disciplinarian? What was your parental strategy
I
like?
think Bob probably was more the soft one because he wasn't a very hands-on dad. I didn't think he was anyway. He was too much of an absentee dad, so I think I had to become the disciplinarian, but I'm not very good at that. So, but I think the kids turned out pretty well, so I guess it was okay. But your first crack at it, you wonder how's this going to work out, but it was good.
Yeah. So when it comes to caring for the kids, what kind of foods did you make that they really liked? Were you much? Were you very skilled in that regard, in the homemaker sense?
Yes, I would say I was. I enjoyed cooking, and we always belonged to this gourmet dinner club, so I liked trying new things. But I remember being away for a short time, and the kids said that Bob made macaroni and cheese, and it had so much salt in it they couldn't eat it. He never cooked anything. He didn't know where the kitchen was even, so it was awful. So the cooking and all was up to me. But we started this tradition at Christmas. Well, actually, it followed from my family. Christmas Eve was the big event, not Christmas Day. Well, both were, but we celebrated both. But for Christmas Eve, I started this one Christmas Eve that I'm going to do something different. We're going to have a steak and lobster fondue and a chocolate fondue for dessert. Well, that was so popular. They still want it to this day, so we've never lost it. It became a tradition that stuck and stuck hard. So that's a memorable thing. But other than that, I don't know. The kids were, they loved McDonald's and the usual kid things, but and they loved things like my Black Forest cake, and for birthdays they could always choose what they wanted, and that was always on the list. I got so tired of that Black Forest cake recipe, but now I have no stove, so I'm off the hook for that.
So after the children started to get a little bit of independence and they didn't need the constant parental watch all the time, you could have gone back to your career. Mm-hmm. You decided to go the educational route again. Mm-hmm. Why did you decide that, and what did you do?
Well, I decided that because it was I needed more stimulation or something outside the house, and having a job takes up quite a lot of time. I didn't want to take that much time away from the children, so I thought that university was a more manageable, or I could adjust my time better in accordance with the children's needs. So that's why I chose to go back to university.
And what did you take?
Health Services Administration, and that was a master's degree level. So when I finished that master's degree, a professor asked me if I would be interested in a scholarship to do a PhD, that there was a Kellogg scholarship available. So I accepted it, and I did a PhD after that. And that was about the end of the line for education. So that was the end of my education. But I thought I had gone as far as I could go. So that's what I did, and after that I worked in the cancer field for quite a long time at the Cross Cancer Institute and the Alberta Cancer Board, which administers all cancer clinics in the province, including the Cross Cancer Institute, the Calgary Institute, all of them. So that was very enjoyable. I liked that, but then I kind of burned myself out, and at 55, I did the Freedom 55, and I retired. And I had this big, long bucket list of all the things, fun things, that I never had time to do, or never did pursue because I was buried in something else. So yeah. I retired at 55, and I did lots of.
What were some of the fun things that you wanted to do upon retirement, and what's still on that list?
Well, travel was a big thing, so we had more time then to travel. So I'm sure Bob has told you we have been around the world a couple of times, and other things that I was passionate about was scrapbooking. You know, this craze for scrapbooking, this creative scrapbooking. I've got a scrapbook album for every trip we took, every year of the kids' lives, and I've done many scrapbooks for all the babies in my life, nieces and nephews, and all the things in between, lots of wedding albums. And by the time I finished that hobby, I counted that I had done 105 albums. And then I said, well, I think I'm done with this now. But I really enjoyed that hobby. But I got into the worst habits doing that hobby. I seemed most inspired in the middle of the night. I would get up at 2 a.m. and go down to my scrapbooking little haven and scrapbook all night. But that has come to an end. Other things, just things, I took a cake decorating course, and I did many wedding cakes for all of my nieces and nephews too, and I enjoyed doing wedding cakes, so that was a fun hobby too. So,
what were some of the, getting back to travel, what were some of the locations that you visited that really struck a chord with you, that were just memorable in any way?
Oh, there were so many. Italy is one, just a beautiful place. I love the South Pacific. I enjoyed India in all of its poverty and filth and beauty, like the Taj Mahal, all the contrasts there. Australia is a fun place. But we always enjoyed, indulged in a lot of tours and things, so we did get to know places, but that was about it. I would rather be safe, I think, and comfortable, yeah.
Where did you not go that you would have liked to have gone, or still would like to?
There is no place left that I have on my bucket list. I've done them all, yeah.
Have you had a chance to explore your French heritage?
Not a lot, no. And that is one regret about travel. I should have done or paid attention to that, but we are now too old to pursue that. We have traveled in France, but not to the region where my father and his family came from. I should have paid more attention to that. But anyway. Well, the Kennedy assassination for sure. I was working at the University Hospital, and of course it was all over TV, and everybody was gathered and watching and just horrified. So yeah, that left a lasting memory. And more recently, and I don't know how in our education we weren't educated about the residential schools. I feel it's such a tragedy, such a horrible tragedy. But say we weren't taught about it in school or even told about it in school. I think I've learned something about it in my life along the way, but not to the extent that I feel I should have known as a part of my country's history, an important part of history. So that's something that's worrisome to me right now in this day and age. But what other major events? We lived in Cleveland when there were a lot of black riots going on, and I barely got away with my life, actually. We were really thrown into quite a mess in Cleveland. There were riots. We could see fires burning all around from our hospital where we worked. And I went to get my license renewed one day, and I'm standing in a long line, and there's a lot of black people there, and some black men were harassing me and saying not very nice things, and a guard walked by, and I stupidly said to him, do I have to stand and put up with this? So he gave them a talking to. Well, they stopped, but when I went out the back door, they were waiting for me with knives. And I had my nurse's uniform on because I had come from work. They took those knives and just the tip and just shredded my uniform to just in shreds with these sharp knives. They didn't cut me, but they cut my uniform to pieces. And I don't know if they would have gone farther or not. I was so terrified. Was able to scream out, and the same guard came by again and of course sent them away, and I drove home. But I said to Bob, I can't live here anymore, I'm going home. But I got over it and stayed, and I learned to adjust to that kind of life, which was pretty different than living here in Canada. But it was a scary event for me.
Living through COVID has been an interesting past couple of years for us.
Yes.
As people watch this video many years from now, perhaps, how has it made a big impact in your life? And has it been really disruptive? Have you known anybody that's gotten sick? Can you talk about that?
Yes, I've known a few people who have died actually from COVID. And when it first started, someone here actually got COVID, and we were quarantined in this suite for 28 days. And that was probably one of the worst experiences in my life. Bob couldn't understand this concept of being quarantined. He wanted to go out all the time, and of course we couldn't even leave the room. All our food was brought here and everything. So that was a really awful experience. And just being kept away from our kids and grandkids and good friends and whatnot, it was awful, but everyone found it awful. So, and yet I have a lot of faith in science, and that they would get this under control with science, like the vaccines and so on. I had faith in that. I just thought, why is this taking so long? But they did it really pretty darn quickly, didn't they? For sure. Yeah, it was awful. I hope we don't have to go through one of these in our lifetime again. Maybe our children will, but hopefully I don't have to. But I would like them not to mourn that I'm gone, but just to remember some of the good things. I hope they remember their mother, their grandmother, their great-grandmother as a kind and generous person. That you really, I guess, could go to and ask for most anything, and she'd say sure. So I hope that's what they remember most.
What's the key to making a great Black Forest cake?
Oh, well, having gone to Germany and personally brought it back in your hands, and other than that, just patience, I guess. Yeah, just patience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bob had said that he's accomplished all and more that he set out to, and that if he goes home tomorrow, he's fine with that.
Likewise.
How do you feel about that?
I feel the same.
When
yeah.
you hear him say that, though, you still could be around for another 20 years.
I could be, yes. I accept that. That's okay. That's okay. I have found it very difficult. You know, that you work so hard and you play hard and you have a good life, and then you get to the end and your partner loses their memory. It's an awful way to end things, you know. So I think if he's ready to be done, I accept that. Yeah.
Any final words for the grandkids and great-grandkids?
Oh, follow your dreams. Just follow your dreams. Yeah. And let them take you where they may, but have a happy life. Well, I only have 2 grandchildren. I'm so sad about that. I wish I had at least 12 or 15. And you hear some of these old people saying, I've got 20 grandchildren. I say, oh! So Shayna doesn't have any children, of course, but Sean has 2. Austin is now 19 years old, and he is doing a welding apprenticeship right now. And Samantha, our granddaughter, just turned 18, and she thinks she would like to be a chiropractor. So whatever they wish. Grandma's got all the funding in place for them to be educated to whatever degree they wish. So that's a comforting feeling to know that they are set up for whatever they would like to be. So I encourage them in that direction, but I also encourage them to pursue things that will make them happy or that they enjoy. No use pushing children to be doctors if they have no interest. So I want them to do things that they will enjoy. So
what are some family traditions? You mentioned the fondue on Christmas Eve.
Yes.
What are some of the other things that, as a family, you hope that we can carry on for many, many years to come? Is there any that come to mind?
Well, of course, the birthdays are important, so there's always a big day for birthdays. Everybody likes the keg, so that's a favorite place to go for dinner, and then whatever else they want to do to celebrate. So that's important. But we've gotten away from things that as the children get older. Can't think of anything else that's become really traditional.
As they move on in their lives and they develop their own relationships, and I mean, sometimes relationships fail, what advice would you have for your grandkids or one day great-grandkids when it comes to finding a partner?
That first love probably isn't the one that's going to see you to the end, but enjoy that first love and second and third, but the right one will come along. So just but having that is important in your life, I think, to have those kinds of relationships. But so far my grandchildren haven't dove into that zone, so I'm not sure why. Maybe it's because their parents were divorced when they were teenagers, and I feel badly about that I think it's had a negative effect on them. But part of that is because their mother is mentally ill, So she has not been a good example for them, and I feel really badly about that. But also, I understand that Sean could not carry that on and on and on. He stuck with it for a really long time, but hopefully they'll get out from under her influence soon, I hope, because it's not been good. I would like them not to mourn that I'm gone, but just to remember some of the good things. I hope they remember their mother, their grandmother, their great-grandmother as a kind and generous person that you really, I guess, could go to and ask for most anything, and she'd say sure. So I hope that's what they remember most.
What's the key to making a great Black Forest cake?
Oh, well, having gone to Germany and personally brought it back in your hands, and other than that, just patience, I guess. Yeah, just patience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bob had said that he's accomplished all and more that he set out to, and that if he goes home tomorrow, he's fine with that.
Likewise.
How do you feel about that?
I feel the same.
When you hear him say that, though, you still could be around for another 20 years.
I could be, yes. I accept that. That's okay. That's okay. I have found it very difficult. You know, that you work so hard and you play hard and you have a good life, and then you get to the end and your partner loses their memory. It's an awful way to end things, you know. So I think if he's ready to be done, I accept that. Yeah.
Any final words for the grandkids and great-grandkids?
Oh, I hope they...
Just a little word of wisdom to them.
Oh my goodness. Follow your dreams. Just follow your dreams. Yeah. And let them take you where they may, but have a happy life.